Hey everybody, Steve Przebrowski. Welcome to tip number 59 in the series 101 Tips to Ace Your Promotional Exams. So let's get started. As a reminder, my website, code3firetraining.com, is a free stuff link with lots of great information on it. Check it out if you haven't already. Also, this series is based on my latest book, 101 Tips to Ace Your Promotional Exam from Fire Engineering Books and Videos, available off their website as well as mine. So let's get into tip number 59. Now, in the last tip, 58, we talked about preparing for and rehearsing the most important things to do basically at the firehouse, which is most of your time as an officer or as a firefighter is spent at the firehouse with your crew members and doing stuff, training, running calls. Well, not running calls. That's a small part. We'll talk about that here, but most of your time is spent with your personnel, your crews at the firehouse, or preparing for the emergencies. Now, in tip number 59, we segue now to the emergency scene, which is still a critical component of what we do. Now, most of our day is not spent at the emergency scene, but when it does, we better be top-notch, prepared, ready to rock, and just ready to get the problem solved to the best of our abilities. So the voices of experience that I have, or words of wisdom, for this tip are from two of my good friends, Dave Dodson, BC, retired out of Colorado. Dave is famous for the reading smoke stuff. So if you probably have maybe read some of his stuff, watched his videos, or maybe even seen him in person. But Dave does a great job on the reading smoke stuff and bringing that to our attention because it really ties in to the emergency scene. And also Ryan in Pennington, captain out of Charleston, West Virginia, got him as a voice of experience as well, because Ryan's also known very well for all the hoarding fires, all the the challenges that we face across the country with contents, heavy content, hoarding. Not every fire department's dealing with a situation in their jurisdiction of content, heavy content. So check it out, because those two guys have added a lot of great substance to what I have to offer. So in talking about the three most important things, the emergency scene ties into reading smoke as well as sizing up, because what it comes down to is pretty much size up, radio reports, and assigning companies. Now, I don't want to, how do I say this? I can't figure a good way to say it without trying to shave hairs or get too in the weeds. You probably obviously heard the term size up and probably even a radio report. Now, a lot of people say, hey, when I'm going to get on scene as the officer, I'll give my size up on the radio. Okay, not to be totally anal retentive, I guess that's the word I'm looking for about it, but there's a difference between radio reports and size up. Again, it doesn't matter as long as you're covering the same things, what you call it or what you use, whatever acronyms, mnemonics, whatever else. The key is you do this stuff when you get on scene. And really, to me, size up is the mental picture that starts. I know a lot of people say, well, size up starts when you get on shift that day at 8 o'clock in the morning, whatever time your shift changed, and size up ends when the shift is done. I'll take it a step further. Size up started the day that you wanted to work for that department. Think about it. The day you made that decision to apply and submit your application for whatever fire department is the day you started your size up. And you go, huh? Think about it. When you put that application in for your department that you work at, I bet you started doing research. I bet you started visiting firehouses, visiting the internet if it was available when you started applying. And I'm sort of dating myself because when I was testing in the early 90s to become a firefighter, Al Gore hadn't created the internet yet. So there was research had to be done the old school method, actually show up at a firehouse and talk to firefighters and get their feedback, ask their questions, and have them assist you to the best of their abilities. Well, that is still something that needs to be done. Get your butt to the firehouse and start meeting people. But also the internet's a great additional way to help do your research. But size up is that full picture of what you're addressing. Obviously, when the bell goes off and you arrive on scene, that's when size up really better start. But you started learning about your first do area, your major target hazards, your demographics, that time that you started probably preparing for that oral interview. So that's it. But really, size up is that full picture of everything that leads up to it. Obviously, the current incident, and then obviously storing those nuggets away when you leave, waiting for that next incident to happen at that location or at a similar location or of a similar type. Radio reports is actually what you say on the radio. When you get on scene, Obviously you're going to maybe, engine 30 responding, or en route or whatever you say, or you may be pushing the button. But really the radio report is that 30-second or less report when you show up on scene, whatever the situation is. Dispatch, engine 1 is on scene of a 1-story house, fire showing from the front. Engine 1 will be establishing Main Street IC or whatever you call it. And command is going to be mobile as we're going to initiate an aggressive search and fire attack because I believe that there are victims inside. 2 in, 2 out will not be established. We'll file the emergency exception report later on with the fire chief. We've got our own water supply. Next in engine, take command upon your arrival and get your crew in and whatever. But radio reports at 30-second or less. This is basically what I got. My engine, whatever your apparatus ID is, establishing command, whether it's mobile command or whether it's, mobile meaning get your butt in the building. Because if you're the first in officer, don't pass command to someone that's not there. I mean, if someone's not there on your butt, you're going to still have command. Command just maybe at the, maybe at the engine or maybe mobile, depending on what the situation is. Fully involved building, command's probably going to be mobile or at the rig. But most of our incidents are not fully involved buildings, 25%, 50% involvement. Well, guess what? First in engine, you're going to get your butt in that building and do an aggressive search and try to get water in the fire and see if there's any victims that need to be rescued from harm's way. That's why we're the fire department. But again, the radio report is that first initial painting of the picture. And then additional radio reports come to assigning companies, each of those additional companies that you're going to assign that arrive. And sizing up, like I mentioned, is just that whole picture, that whole evaluation. I mean, Lloyd Layman has a mnemonic. There's many mnemonics. FPOD-P, facts, probabilities, own situation, decision, and plan. That's one way to consider size up. There's also other terms you may have heard if you've done a lot of research and reading. Cole, Twas Wallace was hot. There's all these 13-point size ups that are out there that are great information, but a lot of stuff to remember. So find whatever works for you to make sure that you can accurately size up an incident, obviously based on what you know up to that point, but especially in a split second upon arrival, including that 360-degree hot lap, because that initial size up is going to be critical to how you assign companies, how you place water, where you decide to enter the building, so on and so forth. So size up's critical, radio reports are critical, as well as obviously assigning companies. I think the biggest key, not just for the test, but also for real life, is prepare for all types of incidents, because guess what? That's what can happen. Practice, practice, practice. Don't come in memorized or rehearsed, but be prepared. I remember when I was an engine company captain and I was off for my 4 days because we used to work the old 3-4 schedule, like day on, day off, day on, day off, day on, 4 days off. That was the old schedule. When I came back from a 4-day, I was rusty. I mean, rusty. It's just like, so that's one of those things I got in the habit of, is every time I was coming back from my 4-day back into work, I'd make sure that I'd be, my 20 to 30 minute drive into the firehouse. I'd be sitting there doing radio reports. I'd be trying to size up building situations as I'm driving down the road, obviously trying to focus on the road, not get an accident, but I'd be sitting down, stopped at a park light, at a stop sign or a red light, just practicing my radio reports. All right, county fire, engine 1 on scene, 2-story house, fire showing from the upper floor, blah, 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 blah. Just getting in that habit, because depending on your departments, you may not be doing a lot of radio reports. I mean, in many departments, especially mine, most of our calls are single unit responses, EMS calls, service calls, multiple unit responses, which usually definitely require a full radio report upon arrival. Those are usually far and few in some departments. I mean, that's why I say that I had to get in practice, because it was very easy to get rusty, because I wasn't doing them every shift, because most of our calls were EMS calls. Engine 1 responding, engine 1 on scene, engine 1 clear, available, engine 1 in quarters. Now it's pushing the button. So it's very easy to get complacent if 90% of your calls are just single units where you're just pushing the button or just, on scene, and not say anything. That good radio report, especially when the shit's hitting the fan, is something that you better be regularly practicing. So when the shit is hitting the fan, you don't pull up the scenes. Holy crap, engine 1 on scene, send us the hallelujah package, which is send us everything you got and then some. I mean, we've all heard those happen. And then, you're screaming, you're yelling as the incident commander, as the first in company officer until the BC arrives. You got to set the tone. You got to have solid command presence. That's why I think practice and preparation is not just beneficial for the test, but more importantly for real life. So figure out your radio reports well in advance, have your size up plan, whatever you use, figure it out. So it's not a holy shit, what is that? Have some system in place that you have that is easy to remember, easy to use, to make sure you would do a full, not just 360 size up around, but a full all picture size up. So think about it. When you pull up to that significant incident, it should not be the first time that you prepared for what you need to say, what you need to do, how you need to say things, how you need to act, how you need to assign personnel and resources, and what you need to request. Again, most of the time, significant incidents make up a small percentage of most of our departments. I mean, most fire departments, well, your fire department may have busy companies, but every fire department more than likely has those slow companies, sometimes slow companies that run 1 call a day, 2 calls a day, 3, if you're lucky, and most of them are routine calls. Complacency is easy to get built into your system, and that's the last thing you want to have happen, because it happened to me at one time. And I mentioned earlier that I used to prepare on my 4-day, first day back, to make sure I wasn't rusty. The reason I did that is because I got burned. Thankfully, not literally or figuratively, but it could have been a lot worse, where I was so rusty that we had a 8:05 in the morning. It was 8 o'clock shifts time. I literally just had time to put my gear on the rig. I got there at 7 o'clock, put my gear on the rig. I don't drink coffee, so grabbed a Diet Coke, was chatting with the guys. Bell goes off like right after 8 o'clock. We're heading out the door, and it was probably maybe 2-3 blocks away. And it was one of those times where it wasn't a significant incident, thankfully. But when I pulled up there, I was like, all right, County Fire Engine 1, and it was just embarrassing. And it was one of those tongue-tied and twisted moments where I'm like, oh, this is not good. And I finally County Fire Engine 1 on scene, nothing's showing, I'll be investigating. And then I'm just like going, fuck, that was bad. And it forced me, though, is that that, again, in my department, sometimes it's like once a month, if you're lucky, that you're going to be first on scene, just to be able to say something like that, depending on what station you work at. So be on the top of your game, so when that call does come in, you don't look like a goofball out there, because again, your your respect and credibility is going to depend on your command presence, calm, cool, and collect, and be able to paint that picture in a short, concise, non-diarrhea out of the mouth format. We all have those officers in our departments that are like 5 minutes of diarrhea out of their mouth, and it's like, just shut up, cut to the chase, get to the point, short, sweet, concise. So with that, as always, thank you very much for the gift of your time. Until the next time, be safe, and we will see y'all soon. Have a great day, everybody.